Hello, sweet friend. My name is Maike, and in this video, I would like to journal with you in my point of view diary duo, which is my illustrated journal for this year. And when I thought about what or how to share my journaling process in here, I realized that maybe 2 out of the 3 steps in me assembling my pages is maybe the most interesting to share, or the most information rich, if you want to call it that. And that is phase 1, when I decide what to draw, what moment to put onto paper. And then usually step 2 is to just go over my pencil lines with my fountain pen ink, which is a very flowogenic step for me, but maybe not so interesting for you because there's nothing, like there's no new information added. But then step 3, I usually decide what areas to fill in with a darker color or with the ink color, and then also which areas get a pass with a marker. And I thought that might be of interest to you, sort of how I decide where to put the values. And so I thought we do step 1 and step 3 in this video. We're gonna sketch out a composition for this January 27th, and then we can also go into this drawing right here and add some values. And I'll have some timestamps below, so if either one of those is more of interest to you, then you can jump forwards and backwards, I guess. And we'll start with the sketch. And maybe, do I zoom you in? Well, I think first I wanted to show you, because on this day, I already know what I'm going to draw because our pipes froze overnight, so we had no running water in the morning. And that is one of those examples where it's pretty clear right from the get-go what I'm going to draw for the day, because it's such a pattern interrupt. It's so unusual that it's like, oh yeah, what else would I draw for that day? But I also wanted to mention that sometimes it's not that clear. And then I just think through my day and I almost, in my mind's eye, scrub through it like a video. And sometimes it almost catches on something, on a moment of the day that has a different texture to it, or that feels very clear in my mind because of a juxtaposition, perhaps. So one example is this right here. So it's not unusual to eat a snack, and that feels very mundane in terms of the scene. But on this specific day, I was all of a sudden very aware of not having exercised in quite a while, and it was the afternoon, and it made me really conscious, like standing there and eating the potato chips made me really conscious that this would actually be the time of day to get a session in. And so, yeah, that kind of just stood out to me because I've been trying to regularly work out this year, and last year that was a big goal, to move my body more. And yeah, so this is one of those examples where, yeah, it's a very small moment, and yet it has that extra interest to it, at least to me, that is kind of interesting, and something that I really enjoy about this journal in particular, because this is the kind of stuff that's sometimes easy to overlook in other journaling, at least for me, or it's hard to express in words, and there's just something about drawing it as a little scene that just is really interesting. And then, can we see anything else like that? This maybe is another one of those examples where, of course, it's not unusual for me to sit on the couch and watch something on my iPad, but on that particular day, I had some really nice chocolate, some German chocolate, that is, which is a nice treat while living here in the US. So yeah, that definitely felt like the moment to capture. And we can talk about more about like sort of finding those moments if you're interested in that. But that's just a little precursor. But yeah, like I said, for this 27th here, I am pretty certain I know what to draw in terms of the frozen pipes. And so I'm going to go in with a mechanical pencil. And as always, I hope you can see enough, both because the autofocus sometimes thinks my hands are more important than the paper, and also because when I draw for myself, I obviously try to keep the pencil lines as light as possible so that I don't have to erase as much, but that is obviously not quite helpful to you, so I'm going to try and be a little bit more heavy-handed. All right, in terms of pipes frozen, not having flowing water, obviously the tricky thing here is that something that is not happening is sometimes a little bit more difficult to show than something that is happening. So water flowing is easier to draw than water not flowing. But I think we can make do with some facial expressions that make clear that something isn't right. And so I think the way to go about this is to draw my kitchen and the kitchen sink. Maybe we'll put that somewhere right here, maybe. And you know what? Never mind. I tend to find it a little easier to draw the characters first and then make the environment match the proportions of the person. So there's that. So I think I'm going to draw myself right here, looking, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I wasn't angry. It's more like, this is not how it's supposed to be. So a little bit confused or thoughtful. And can you see? Yes. So I like characters that have these balloony heads. And then I could have my hand up here, like my finger, like that. Like so. And then my sweater, like this perhaps. And then my eyes would be maybe about, nope, and now I'm looking straight. I want her to look somewhere down here where the sink would be. So that is not correct. And I actually tilted her head this way slightly. I draw my characters very flat. And so instead of three-dimensionally rotating the head, something you can do is to tilt sideways to indicate a character looking down, and then the pupils go in this direction. And I think they have to be further to the right even still. Sometimes I get the pupils right away, and I have them looking where I want them to look. And then other times, like when I'm filming, that obviously takes some time. And now the hand looks a little high up in my face, as if I'm about to poke myself. So I think we need to lower that. Maybe right there is good enough. Yeah. It's not ideal, but I've mentioned this before. With a project like this, if you want to do a little drawing each day, perfectionism has to be kept in check at all times. Because otherwise this is just not doable. And then maybe I can have I can just kind of lean on the counter. Like so. And then I'll just usually draw my sweaters as a trapezoid. Something like that, maybe. Yeah. And I don't I want to reiterate about the pupils because I don't know if I made that clear. So see how the head is tilting this way, so rotated this way, and then you draw the pupils going this way, and it helps make it look like she's looking down without having to three-dimensionally rotate the head. And then I always give myself a little bit of a, I don't know, bangs, I guess, even though I don't have bangs. It's just, it looks cuter than to just have the hair going straight down the sides, I guess. That's another thing. I do sometimes change things a little bit just to make them nicer to draw, and I try not to be too far off, because otherwise what's the point? And then it being a journal, you know, then I could just fantasize about everything. But I do want to have fun with it, and I do want it to look as cute as possible. And so, and then I'll just have some legs just going down here. Super easy. And so, if this is the counter, like the thickness of the counter, or I don't know, I guess the lip of the counter would be here, wouldn't it? And then have the hand all the way up there, and then there is actually a, it's like going around the corner right here, so we'll indicate that. And then again, I'm not too fussy about the perspective being correct in perspective, and I think it's more fun to cheat perspective and use something that's a little bit more flat. And one of those aspects is that you always choose the view of the object that most communicates what you're looking at. So this counter, we're looking front, right? So if there was, you know, a drawer right here, it would be like that, but there actually is no drawer right there. But well, but there are drawers, so like this. But then here I want to show the sink, and so we're gonna just have the sink be in the perspective that we're looking from above into the sink. But then the, oh my goodness, what's this called? The water, the spout? No, my goodness. You know what I mean. This we're looking at from the side again. And so, and then if you open, if you want water flowing, you would actually have the handle right there. I don't know if that's clear that there is supposed to be something happening. Probably not, but, and then we actually have a window right above our sink. I guess we could indicate the snow outside to show that it's so cold that nothing is coming out of there. And then maybe we'll put some dishes in the sink. Like a glass. And maybe a bowl. With a little spoon resting in there. We don't have a dishwasher, so. Yeah. I don't know if that's the clearest thing ever, but we can make this thing here. And then we can think about how much of the rest of the environment do we want to show. Sometimes it's nice to just, you know, build out the composition, or to just tell more of a story about what else is there. And in this case, I guess Where do we want that to go? Maybe there. So this is the counter. And then there would actually be some storage up top, cupboards. And then we actually have a big bowl sitting here for fruit. I mean, we also put our bread in there. Yeah, let's, I don't know, draw a little bread, like so. And maybe just set an apple or 2 apples right here in front of the bowl. Yeah. And then on the outside is actually a tree right here. And then here would be all the snow. I don't know. Yeah. You know, again, maybe not the clearest in terms of what is happening. But I hope you liked the drawing of this anyway, and that was helpful to see. Let's zoom you back out a little bit. And oh, look at that. Actually, this was also a scene in our kitchen in that same and interesting. Here I have the water thingy on the opposite side, probably because, you know what it is? It's probably because otherwise this gets in the way. This was me watching our neighbors trying to get their car out of their driveway with all that snow and ice, and I was thinking, if it's that hard to get it out, maybe you shouldn't be out and about driving, you know. But yeah. Okay, well, let's see what we can do in terms of adding some values right here. Zoom you back in. Okay, and then I usually start with the darker spots that I do with the same fountain pen ink color that I used for the lines. And with this, it's mostly just thinking through where are the important bits, like what is the story here? And for this, the important bit is that we're watching a movie on the laptop. So I'm already thinking the laptop is probably gonna be an object that I fill in with the marker because I don't want to make it super dark. But it's resting on this little, it's a pillow that has like a wood top exactly for laptops and things to use in bed or on the couch. It probably has some nicer name than that, but and this is actually pretty dark. So you can think about what value does the object have, but yeah, I usually go more with what's the story, and then the most important thing, start making decisions about that, and then have that have a ripple effect onto everything else, and make that match whatever is going on. So, for example, we have our shirts. There's 3 layers back here, right? Our shirts, the pillows, and the headboard of the bed. And it would be nice to have some distinction between those 3. So I would think that it would be very economical to add a color or a value to the pillows. And it might even be fun to do like a little pattern and make that match our bedding. And there's 2 blankets here as well. There's the big blanket and a smaller blanket up top. And the smaller blanket up top should definitely have some sort of patterning to it, because I think that would be cute. We could fill in this heart with black. Or not black. With, this is actually Teranishi Gentle Green. really interesting in color, because even here you can see on most papers it does go down blue first, and then depending on what paper you're using, it sometimes changes to green or to this bluish green. Super fun. And so this is interesting because in this drawing we don't have a lot of objects, I guess. And so maybe this isn't the greatest example to show you how I decide where to put values, but also maybe I'm overthinking it and you're just happy to have the company and see me do this. So we can obviously also do more of these. Last time I used gentle green, I actually went with a green marker, which I guess is also kind of nice, but I wanted to see what it would be like to go in with this sepia light from the Ecoline brush pens. Well, and now that I'm doing this, I mean, there could have also been a thing where I could have done more of the background in this lighter value, just to indicate that it is evening and we're watching in the evening. But oh, and maybe what I often color in is my hair, because it's so nice for it to frame my face, because human faces are almost always part of this story, aren't they? And because this fountain pen ink is not waterproof, it does smudge with the marker, and most of them do. Depending on what color you're working with, sometimes they smudge more than others or less than others. So I'm trying not to hit the lines too much. Yeah. And I don't know if I like how that now looks on my husband's face, but here we are. And so with patterns too, you can create, depending on what kind of patterns you draw, you can also change the value based on how tight the pattern is. But it's nice to distinguish between things and adding patterns. And usually, again, I'm pretty liberal with what kind of patterns I put on. I just decide that based on what I think looks nice and fits the scene, not necessarily what the actual pattern is. So there's that. I do think the distinction between the laptop and the lamp, we definitely need some distinction there. And I did say I would color in the laptop, didn't I? And again, this might be the wrong choice. Sometimes doing these things on camera is interesting, because sometimes I like the things that I come up with on camera more because there's this drive to work in somewhat of a speedy fashion, and sometimes I like them less. And this whole exercise of adding these values is pretty newish to me, so this is definitely also a skill builder exercise for me. And so yeah, I'm not sure all of this was the right choice. Again, like, I wonder what it would look like to fill more of the background in, and whether or not I can still make that choice now that I've decided on these. Or make the bed dark to just frame this more. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with that rather than adding a whole lot of marker in the background. Okay, well, here goes nothing. I can't take that back. So sometimes I do think that maybe when I'm not unsure, better not to do it, because then at least you're not have dark areas where you then regret them. if that makes sense. Like I'd rather have not enough contrast than too much contrast. And I hope now you can see how that changes from blue to green. And again, I think on Tomoe River paper, it stays more blue than this. But yeah, on creamy papers, like this point of view paper, which I don't know, they just say that it is a Japanese paper. They don't specify what kind is in here, which I still want to write them and see if somebody writes me back. But yeah, Midori paper, on that cream Midori paper, it also turns this nice green, which I like. I tend to like, whenever there's colors that do different things based on the paper they're on, I tend to like the versions that happen on Midori paper more, because they tend to be warmer, which I like, which is why I also prefer creamy paper. So we're not surprised, are we? And I don't know if that was the right choice. But we are here now, and we did this, and I can't take it back. And in the grand scheme of things, again, this is a journal, so I'll just be happy to have the memory when I flip back through this in years to come. And that is something to definitely keep in mind when doing illustrated journals. This is not a finished work of art. You are trying to capture memories and special things to look back on. And it's obviously a nice thing to do in the moment, very photogenic, very soothing. But once the in the moment part of this is done, you're doing this for your future self, and your future self won't care that maybe the value choices weren't the greatest. You know what I mean? Or that certain proportions are off. Like, I think I've mentioned that before. Sometimes, like if I look back at this now, her head could be a little smaller. She looks a little maybe too childish. She can sometimes look a little too childish if the head gets too big. But I'm not gonna redraw the head just because of that. Yeah. Well, I hope you got something out of this. Let me know which aspect of this journaling process you would like to see more of, or if you have questions about illustrated journaling that I can potentially answer. I do want to leave you with this, that I have found that no matter how simple or maybe even crude the drawings are, illustrated journaling is so rewarding. It's so fun in the moment, and there's just something about drawing your memories that really captures the feeling and the emotions of the moment. And I want to really encourage you, even if you think you can't draw, that again, just draw stick figures, and I think you will be surprised of how meaningful they can become. Yes, please don't let your drawing skills deter you from keeping an illustrated journal. Yeah. All right. As always, thank you so much for sharing this time with me. And if you want to let me know that you've made it this far, maybe leave me a water drop emoji. And until next time, happy journaling.